Obamacare
Yes.
is absolutely unconstitutional as far as I'm concerned. It is an absolute overstepping. You know, I go back to the, let's step back even further. It used to be a perk. When did that change? It was, yeah, I got a job and benefits. I mean, it was something that a company offered as an incentive for you to hire on with them. Now all of a sudden it's a requirement that I pay for someone else's medical. I mean, my mom's a realtor. She doesn't get her medical paid for. She's self-employed by definition, so she has to go out. You know, do we have issues in our medical? Yes, absolutely. But we have tort reform is an area that has to be addressed. We need to open it up, the competition among state lines, and we need to be able to pool small businesses. I know what we were paying for ours personally, and that's obscene. The amount that we had to pay, and I'm sure everybody in this room as small business people have to pay. You have to be able to pool your resources. I mean, that's what major corporations do. I mean, why is it that a corporation can, or you can't keep somebody out for pre-existing, a child, for example? You can't exclude that child from coverage when you work for a corporation, but if you're an individual, we can exclude the child for pre-existing. That's wrong. I mean, that's just wrong. But I think competition is always the key. It works in everything. You know, the philosophy of somebody will figure out a way to make it less expensive and to make it more competitive. That's the nature of our economy. When the government starts stepping in, you know, we're just a heartbeat away from single payer. I mean, that's just the reality of it. Even having it out there is a dangling option. And our dear president has said as much. He's incrementalizing us. He said it. I mean, it's all over, you know, if you want to look it up. So I hope that answers your question. I'm absolutely against. And one last thing, it's actually, people need to grasp that that's a state rights issue. That's going to be coming to our state here real quick. And the legislature better be firm and not swayed, because if you don't think the lobbyists are going to be coming hot and heavy in the next session, and I'm not the one saying that. I mean, I did say that. Actually, I blogged about that. But it is also being said on a national level that because the 10th Amendment is what's going to prevent it, if the states have the guts. But unfortunately, our states haven't had the guts to stand and use the 10th Amendment in a really long time. It's time we started doing that again. Most of our legislators don't even understand our own history. They don't even understand that. If you think back and just think of this logically, when the 13 colonies got together and soon to be states got together in order to form the Union, they all were independent at that time. They weren't going to walk in and give up all their rights. I mean, this was the challenge of the Constitutional Convention. And that's why there's 20 distinct specific roles of the federal government. It's, all right, what benefits all of us? Let's come up with the things that benefit us all. And that's it. Most people don't even know that anymore, unfortunately. The federal government's become so overbearing that we don't even grasp that the states, that's why we have the 10th Amendment. Everything else falls to the state level, the state and the people. But we take matching dollars as an example. You see, the Tea Party, sorry, I'm going to keep going if you guys don't mind, but you know, back the original Tea Party, you know, you had Parliament, and there were taxes, and there was all that issue, taxation without representation. But what happened was Parliament understood they got rid of every tax that they had imposed without representation, except for the tea tax. And they lowered the tea tax to such a level that the colonists were going to be paying less for tea than they had ever paid before. In today's culture, our politicians would say that's a victory, that's a win. But what the colonists understood, and so did Parliament, was that if they bought the tea with the tax, they were by default acknowledging Parliament's right to tax them. It wasn't the amount of the tax, it was that there was a tax at all. That equivalent today is matching dollars. When the government is giving us, the federal government is giving the state matching dollars for programs that it doesn't have a constitutional right to be a part of, we are by default saying it's okay. Now, how do you go about that? You can't just turn off the spigot. You can't. I mean, we would have anarchy and chaos. We don't want that. But we do have to start the process of turning off the spigot and starting to get the federal government on notice that you work for us. Going back to my corporate office days, The federal government is overhead. They're the overhead, and we're the revenue generators. And no company functions without the revenue generators. I mean, we're it. But what was amazing to me when I worked for major corporations, and I went back to work for a major corporation, and in the boom, the overhead grew substantially. And as the decline started to come, it was, we need you to do more. They started looking at us as the revenue generators and saying, you need to do more. But yet they weren't making any cuts at the overhead level. None. And that's what we're doing here in our state and in our state government. We ballooned where we shouldn't have been, and now as the revenues have retracted, we're like, well, we can't cut back. You just need to do more. You need to give us more. The problem is they're not selling widgets. The only place for them to get money is from us. Okay, and you know they gave us a tax, but there's two other ballot measures on the ballot in November that if they're not approved, we're going to be another $1.3 billion in deficit. And they never talked about that. There is no plan. We sold buildings. We borrowed against the lottery. This is negligent at best. So you know we've got to get this under control and get it under control fast. I can't take it off the books, but what I do want to get is back on the ballot is the voter protection. And it sounds terrible. I mean, I'm against voter protection all of a sudden, right? I mean, obviously I want to protect the voter, but, and this is, I'm going to take my candidate hat off and just talk as a citizen. I have no business telling the government how to spend dollars in a multi-billion-dollar budget that I have no clue about. I mean, that is, to me, the utmost of irresponsibility. We have a representative republic, not a direct democracy. And this came in because all of a sudden we didn't trust our government. So now we in this state, we're one of the worst. We actually have almost a process that it becomes almost a true democracy. We have so many things going on the ballot on how this needs to be spent and that needs to be spent and this. That's why we have representatives, because my job as a legislator is to go in and know the budget, is to tear into this thing, and you know I'm taking state money to do it. I better be doing my homework to figure out what's going on and what isn't. And so I would go in and really try and get the Voter Protection Act reversed. And I know there's people that would fight me immediately, but I think we do a very poor job as the Republican Party of getting our message out. Again, that goes back, I think, to my personality. I look forward to going into, for lack of a better term, hostile environments, into environments that maybe, you know, it's not a home game for me. I'm going in to educate people. And I'm not going to get everybody to come along with me, I know that, but I can maybe strip off 10% or 20%. You see, the media isn't going to help us. We know that as conservatives. It's just not our friend. So we can whine about it and worry about it, or we can just say, okay, this is the rule. This is how we're playing. And now we're going to have to do our job a little bit better. We're going to have to go into these communities. We're going to have to use our districts. We've got, you know, in our district we have now 300 PCs, I think, on this ballot. Yeah, I was surprised, but 300 PCs. Where's the vision? Where's the coming in from the legislature and going, okay, here's what's going on. We need to get this passed. Here's what I need you guys to do. I've been going to the meetings now for over half a year. I don't see it. I don't hear it, the direction being given. That's my job as a legislator. So, you know, that's where I would go, is trying to get people to understand and explain to them that you can't possibly know the intricacies of this budget. What makes you think you should tell us how to spend the money? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. And if you explain it to most people, they understand it that way. But unfortunately, we do a poor job of getting our message out. So.